All right, today we're going to look at Chapter 4, Lesson 2, and we're going to use a model to help us multiply whole numbers and by a decimal. To begin this lesson, we're going to start off by drawing some quick pictures to help us to solve our multiplication problems. So here we have our problem, which is 3 times 46 hundredths. Now, if you remember from our previous chapter, this equals 1, a long equals 1/10, and an individual unit equals 1/100th, right? So we are going to make 3 groups, because we're multiplying by 3, of 46 hundredths. So I'm just going to lay them out here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundredths. So here is my model, right? Again, I have my 3 groups laid out here. And now what I need to do is I need to combine these groups together. Because if we look over here at the number of hundredths that we have, see 6 and 6 is 12 and 6 more is 18. So what we can do is we can combine these 6 plus these 4, right? And we're going to regroup that into the tenths place. And let's go ahead and erase this up above here so we don't get confused with that. Right? Let's make sure. All right, good. So now we're going to look at the remaining hundredths. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means these 8 hundredths can't be regrouped. So I'm going to have an 8 in my hundredths place, right? So if I kind of drew out my model like that. Now I'm going to move on to the tenths place. Here I have 5 tenths up here at the top. So if I add these 4, that's 9. And if I grab this one from down here, right, this becomes a 1, right? And we would cross those off. Now we're left with 3 tenths right there. And we have 1 right here. And so our answer to 3 times 46 hundredths is 1 and 38 hundredths. So let's take a look at this one. Here we have 4 times 6 tenths. Why don't you pause the video, give it a try, and then come back and see how you did. So with this one, we're going to make 4 groups because we're multiplying by 4. And each group is going to be made up of 6 tenths. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, we have 4 groups because we're multiplying by the number 4. Now I just need to go through and do my regrouping. Now you'll notice I don't have any hundredths out here because I didn't have any hundredths in my factor that had a decimal in it. I'm going to put together these 10 right here to make a 1. I'm going to put together these 10 right here to make a 1. And then I have 4 more tenths laying out over here. So I have a 4 in my tenths place. And then I have 1, 2 in the ones place. And I have to make sure I include that decimal so that my answer is accurate. So the answer to 4 times 6 tenths is 2 and 4 tenths, right? Let's take a look at one more. Actually, before we look at that other one, let's look back at this idea, right? If we think about this as 2 and 4 tenths, right? Let's just think about it. When we drew our picture over here, if we had counted up all of our tenths before we did any regrouping, right, we would have had 5, 10, 15, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, right? We would have had 24 tenths. Well, if we look at this number here, right, and if we ignore our decimal, we have the number 24 there, and then our 4 lands in the tenths place, right? So that's another way that we can kind of think about that idea, right? All right. let's take a look at this one. 4 times 32 hundredths. Again, we're going to make 4 groups. Each group is going to be made up of 32 hundredths. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 1 and 2. Starting off, let's count up our hundredths. And if we count up our hundredths here, we have 2, 4, 6, 8 hundredths. And then we count up our tenths, and we have 3 and 3 is 6 and 9. So we're going to be able to regroup here. So we're going to grab one of those, right? We're going to put all 10 of these together, and that is a 1. We have these 2 tenths left over. And then we had 1 in the ones place. So we get 1 and 28 hundredths. So that's how we can use a model, draw a picture, a quick picture to model our multiplication. Now we could also do this using a grid like this. And if we take a close look at this, we would count this up and we'd say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns, and then we'd count them down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows. This is a 10 by 10. That means that there are 100 tiny little boxes in here. Remember, back in the beginning of chapter 3, we said we could model decimals using these. So let's take a look at our problem. Let's see, here it is. It says a giant tortoise moves very slowly. They can travel a distance about 17 hundredths of a mile in 1 hour. If it travels the same speed, how far can a giant tortoise travel in 4 hours? So we are going to multiply 4, right, because it's going to be moving for 4 hours, times 17 hundredths, because it moves at it's 17 hundredths of a mile every hour. And we're going to use this picture over here to help us to model this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a highlighter here, and we're going to work with green and blue. So the first thing is I want to make a group of 1700. So I know that, whoops, forgot to change it. There we are. So I know, right, that is 1/10. And then on top of that, I need to have another 7 hundredths, right? I would leave those 3 at the bottom there. That's group number 1. Now for group number 2, I have these 3 hundredths right here, plus a tenth, that's 13 hundredths, plus 4 more is 17 hundredths. So that's group number 2. I'm going to try the smaller one, see if it works any better. All right, now I have 6 hundredths right here, plus another tenth, right? So that's 16 hundredths, and then I get just that one right there. And that is 17 hundredths for group number 3. And then we'll use yellow for our final one. So we get 9, right? Hundredths right there. And there, that one would be 10. So that's 1/10. So I need 7 more. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? So we can go ahead and shape that in now. All right. So this is my model of 4 times 17 hundredths. Again, I have 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups. Oops, didn't quite mean to do that. And my 4th group over here. And each group is made up of 17 hundredths. So I go through and count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. They're all the same size. And now what I would do is I would go ahead and I'd look at that model and I'd say, well, what does it equal? What's the answer? Well, I have, whoops, got to change my pen again. I have 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6 full tenths, right? So I have a 6 in the tenths place. And then over here, I am missing these 2, which means that I have 8 hundredths in that column. And so 4 times 17 hundredths is 68 hundredths. Let's take a look at one more just like that. And see how we do with it. Whoops, I gotta change this back. There we are. So now we have 4 times 24 hundredths. So same idea, right? We're gonna grab our highlighter. We're going to have 4 groups, and each group is going to be made up of 24 hundredths. So I'm going to start off by shading in 1/10 and 2/10, right? Because I have a 2 in the tenths place, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 hundredths. So that's group number 1. Now I'm going to switch to my second color. Now I get 6 tenths plus, I'm sorry, 6 hundredths plus 1/10, right? So that's 16 hundredths. So I need 8 more hundredths because 16 plus 8 equals 24, right? So I'm going to go ahead and count down to 8, and there we are. That's group number 2. Now move back to a different color. We're going to make group number 3, right? So here, 2 hundredths. So that's 12 hundredths. That's 22 hundredths. 2 more is 23 and 24 hundredths. So I have 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups. Let's finish it off with our final group. So here we get 8 hundredths plus a tenth. That's 18 hundredths. 6 more gets me to 24 hundredths. So now I've shaded in 4 groups of 24 hundredths, and I just need to take a look at this and figure out what my answer is. Well, I have all but this final column completely shaded in, so that means that there are 9 tenths shaded in, and then in this last column I have 6 hundredths. So the answer here is 96 hundredths. Now, one thing I do want you to be careful of as you're shading in these models is sometimes students are tempted to go through, and let me just erase this and I'll demonstrate it, right? They're tempted to try to go through and instead of combining together different columns and rows, right, they will try to do this. Well, there's one group, and then they'll start totally anew with group number 2, right? And they'll shade in 24 hundredths. And then they'll go to group number 3, and they'll shade in 24 hundredths. And this gets really tricky and really confusing because if you take a look at this, right, like where are we going to put group number 4? And like, let's say that we were multiplying by 3 instead of 4, right? Like pretend like that was a 3, right? Like how do we easily count up our answer? And that part gets confusing because we have all of these like blanks in our model. And so it's not quite as simple to put it all together. So instead of doing it this way, it's really recommended that instead you make sure that you fill in each of the spaces as you go. You can see over here they did 6 hundredths for group number 1, and then we have 4 and 2, which equals 6 hundredths for group number 2. We have another 6 hundredths, and then they have 2 and 4 for group number 4, and then they put their 5th group right here. So just make sure that you're doing it this way as opposed to this way, because it really will make your answers a lot easier to see, right? When we look at this problem here, we can very easily see that we have filled in 3 tenths. Now imagine if instead it looked like this, right? So there, let's do their first group in blue, and our second group in green, and our third group here in yellow, and our fourth group in purple, and our 5th group will jump back to blue. Well, we end up with this part of the model shaded in, right? But that doesn't really like help us to find our answer. So instead of doing it that way, make sure that you keep going with each tenth until it's completely filled in to find your answer. All right, that's lesson 4.2. The models can be really helpful. Use 2 different colors as you shade them in. You don't necessarily have to use 3 or 4 or 5 different colors. You can definitely do it how they've done it here with like 1 shade of blue and then a lighter shade. Or if you just have a pencil, you could shade really dark for one group and then really light for the second group. However you can make it work, make it work. But give it a try. And as always, let me know if you have any questions.